All right, back on the Young Turks. Why do I keep saying that? Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur. I was about to say Ben Mankiewicz.
Yeah, you were.
That really is back to the Young Turks from a long, long time ago. And Kasparian, obviously.
You are canceled. I'm not a big fan of cancel culture, but you are canceled. It's over.
It certainly wouldn't be the first time, and it won't be the last time. I've been canceled many, many times, yet here I am.
Yeah. Just can't get rid of you. What's going on?
Well, trust me, people are trying.
Yeah.
Okay, so lots of news. Elizabeth Warren's dropped out. We're gonna talk about that first, obviously. But guys, Bernie versus Biden, the next 2 weeks are everything. Super Tuesday, we had a shot for a knockout punch. We didn't land it. Now we got a drag out fight. The problem is the media. It's everything. I actually want to talk more about it in the post game. We talked about my race yesterday in the post game. I want to tell you two more things, and it's a hilarious and ironic thing to say that I think I might have solved politics after I just got my ass handed to me in this race.
Jake, even if you won, like you have these phases where you say things like that.
Yeah.
Like I've solved politics. Like,
well, I said I solved life, and I did.
But you didn't.
But I did. Okay, anyway, we're gonna talk about that in the post game, and a shocking fact about my race. So that's tyt.com/join to get the last half hour of the Young Turks, and oftentimes even longer, especially on election nights. And don't miss election night next Tuesday, giant night. And of course, we're doing our fundraising drive, tyt.com/go. It's absolutely imperative.
It is, especially because Cenk desperately needs a button-down shirt to go with that blazer. Otherwise,
and a haircut.
Otherwise, he will continue wearing that T-shirt, which is unacceptable with the blazer. Just unacceptable, and it makes me upset every time he does it.
Shop tyt.com.
All right, let's move on.
I am suspending my campaign for president. I say this with a deep sense of gratitude for every single person who got in this fight.
That's Elizabeth Warren speaking right in front of her home in Massachusetts and letting everyone know in an announcement that she is no longer running for president in the Democratic primary. This was a decision that people have been waiting for, and she finally made it. Now we're gonna get to whether she's gonna endorse anyone in just a minute. But before we do, I wanna go to the next clip where she kind of describes what she's feeling and what she sees herself doing moving forward.
You know, I was told at the beginning of this whole undertaking that there are two lanes, a progressive lane that Bernie Sanders is the incumbent for and a moderate lane that Joe Biden is the incumbent for. And there's no room for anyone else in this. I thought that wasn't right, but evidently I was wrong. I thought it was possible that that wasn't the case, that there was more room to run another kind of campaign. But evidently that wasn't the case.
So that's a really interesting take because she positioned herself as a strong progressive in the beginning of the primary, and then she moved to the center. And the way that she kind of framed it was that she was always somewhere in between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And now, to be honest with you, many people had suspected that in the beginning of the race. But she didn't position herself that way in the beginning of the race. She went from progressive to a little more moderate, right? Mm-hmm. And that tends to upset people who bought into the progressive identification. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Look, first of all, there's no joy in this. I was excited when some of the other moderates dropped out. I should theoretically, politically speaking, be more excited that Elizabeth Warren is dropping out because some of her supporters, or a larger portion of her supporters, might go to Bernie Sanders, but a lot of them already did, and so whereas the moderates were more split up. But it isn't about that. Look, I've said this 1,000 times, and I have gotten plenty of criticism for it too, that I really support and admire Elizabeth Warren. I think she's done great work, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Wall Street reform, you name it. Okay, so at the end of the day, I back Bernie Sanders. I want Bernie Sanders to win. I think that the correct lane for Elizabeth Warren was right next to Bernie Sanders, same policies, but for whatever reason, the establishment and moderates in the party found her to be a little bit safer than Bernie Sanders. And I think a good strategy was saying, hey, I could better, more effectively carry out those plans. And she was on that road, and that's exactly when she was winning. She veered off that road to try to get moderate voters, and that did not turn out well. The mainstream media has their own spin. They claim that she became more progressive, but that's just counterfactual.
So
it's just not true, not remotely true.
You are right. Generally speaking, that is how the media has covered her campaign. They refuse to acknowledge the fact that she started losing support as soon as she started to position herself as more of a moderate. But I do want to give credit. I do want to give credit to some of the writers on CNN.com, because this was the first time I came across a mainstream media source that accurately depicted what happened. Okay, so they write, her standing began to slip in the fall when her support for Medicare for All came under stricter scrutiny from moderate rivals like Biden, Klobuchar, and Buttigieg. In response, she released a pair of proposals, one to finance Medicare for All, and another that would have effectively broken up the bill into two pieces. Warren's attempts to quiet the critics backfired. Opponents of Medicare for All, boosted by an industry spending campaign designed to drive down its popularity, continued their attacks. Progressives too became dissatisfied, voicing concerns over the senator's commitment to passing the legislation. So I think that that's the best depiction of what actually happened, at least in the mainstream media.
I think that that's fair. It gives you both sides of it, and I think it's relatively accurate, certainly accurate from the progressive side. And the first portion where she explained how she's going to pay for it, Anna and I disagreed. That's where she began to lose Anna. I was still fine with it. The second portion where she split it into two is where she lost me. But clearly those are both in the more moderate to conservative direction and not in the progressive direction. That's an obvious fact. That's indisputable. So that's when she started to slide. So those are the facts. Now, guys, the most important thing, we got more clips for you guys, and it's important that you hear out her stories here, and I want to add to that. But right now, Elizabeth Warren can change the entire dynamic of this race.
Yes.
And we need Elizabeth Warren. We need her right now. So I know some of you out there might think like, oh no, we don't need her. Okay, we're gonna take care of this on our own. No, you have to change the media dynamic. Right now, the media is piling onto Bernie Sanders in a way that is oppressive and that is making a big, big difference. I can see it in the upcoming polls of the states, right? So right now, Sanders and Biden are tied, but the media is playing it like it's all over and Biden's already won, which is preposterous. But if Warren were to come in super strong on behalf of Bernie Sanders, it would make all the difference here, because it would basically stop that momentum that Biden has in the media, which is so critical. So if she doesn't do that, an unbelievable missed opportunity. But if she does do it, in a sense, she could become the hero of the story.
Okay, so I disagree with you slightly. I think the media is gonna pile on Bernie no matter what, right? However, I also agree that Warren endorsing Bernie would be a game changer because it would help him considerably.
Yes,
right?
Game changer.
So look, and I get the frustration among Bernie supporters. I'm a Bernie supporter. I certainly feel the frustration because she should have endorsed, in my opinion, immediately Bernie Sanders. Because remember, the whole reason why she got involved in politics is because she wanted to fight Joe Biden specifically because of his bankruptcy bill. And the fact that she's waiting on this is frustrating. And by the way, I just jumped ahead of myself. She has decided that she's gonna hold off on endorsing right now. She is likely to endorse, but the big question is she going to endorse during the primary, or is she gonna endorse during the general election, which is what she did last time around? Now let me go to the clip.
No, that's not an endorsement. Let's be super clear.
No, of course it's not, but that's what she did last time.
No. That's a little different of a situation. Waiting till the general election is the most useless thing in history. Elizabeth Warren is too smart to not know that. She knows that. Okay, there's a reason why she held last time, and I don't agree with that decision. But this time it's time for redemption. And so you can't even consider endorsing Biden when you got into politics to defeat Biden's bankruptcy bill. I don't know why we're having that conversation. I hope we're not having that conversation.
Oh, that conversation is definitely being
had. No, to be fair to Warren, we don't know what she's listening to. Her advisors can say anything they want. It's her decision. But in terms of endorsing Bernie, forget the general election. The states that are coming up on this Tuesday are critical, and the ones next Tuesday, critical. This is it, these two sets of states. So waiting longer than before those elections, that is generally pointless.
So let's hear what she has to say.
It's got to go, not today, but it's got to happen before Tuesday. It's got to, otherwise there's no point. So let's hear her out.
Will you be making an endorsement today? We know that you spoke with both Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders yesterday.
Not today. Not today. I need some space around this, and want to take a little time to think a little more.
Senator, advice to your supporters right now looking for a candidate. What is your advice to them? Obviously, I know you're not endorsing anybody, but what is your advice to them?
Let's take a deep breath and think about this for a little bit longer before we all settle in.
What is there to think about?
There's a lot to think about. Look, we did not have her experience. Her experience is she just ran this really, really hard campaign with it. And look, the pressure that she must have been under on that campaign, they all were under, is enormous. And during elections, you catch feelings, right? And you're getting hit on all sides. She certainly perceives that. So, and she definitely did not react well. I'm not blaming her for it. I'm just saying that she did not like being attacked by Bernie Sanders supporters in her perception. So she's got to sort that out. Look, saying you're indoors now is not necessarily helpful. And I understand the need to think about it and concentrate, et cetera, and not to get pressured into any decision. At the same time, thinking about it doesn't mean think about it for 2 weeks, because then it's, again, pointless. Thinking about it means 1 to 2 days, because after Tuesday, it could be irrelevant. So that's just a fact. Well, if she says that's pressuring her, it doesn't matter. The elections are on Tuesday, so that's a fact.
I have to, and I'm doing my best to be level-headed and not get too fiery during this segment. But I have to reject the framing that Bernie supporters attacked her viciously. The attacks.
No, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying that was her perception.
Right,
of it.
But I push back against her perception of that, because when Bernie supporters started going after her, it was specifically in response to the accusations that she made about Bernie Sanders, telling her that a woman can't win as president, which no one believes. All right,
but this is not helpful. This is not helpful.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on, because I hear you. I want to go to the next clip though, because Bernie Sanders is saying, yeah, you know what? Let's all back off and let's allow her the time that she needs to make the decision. Let's watch.
Would you consider asking Senator Warren to be your running mate?
It's too early to talk about that, but certainly I have a lot of respect for Senator Warren and would love to sit down and talk to her about what kind of role she can play in our administration.
So we have a poll for this, and we want you guys to weigh in and let us know what you think. The poll is, now that Elizabeth Warren is out of the race, whom will she endorse? And then you have 3 options there: Bernie Sanders, Biden, or no one. So please check the poll out. It's tyt.com/Warren, tyt.com/Warren.
Guys, understand, we're not asking you who should she endorse. We get that you would say Bernie. Okay, some of you might say Biden, but that would be an easy poll overall. Who do you think she's going to endorse? And I don't know what you're gonna say about that, because you and I are different people. That's why we're doing the poll.
Yeah, so there was one other clip I wanted to share with you from her decision, and it has to do with the 2 remaining contenders in the Democratic primary and what they represent demographically. Take a look.
I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick over and over.
What your message would be to the women and girls who feel like we're left with 2 white men to decide between?
I know. One of the hardest parts of this is all those baby promises and all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
So I agree with her in that it would have been much more, I guess, preferable to have her in the race as opposed to a man who is experiencing cognitive decline right before our very eyes, someone who's a target-rich environment. I'm talking specifically about Biden. I think the saddest part about this race is that Biden is being propped up by the mainstream press when he is the most vulnerable candidate in the general election. That's incredibly sad. But look, I get it. I one day want to see a woman as president. I want to see an Asian American one day as president. I want to see a gay individual as president. I think representation matters. But it's also about electing the right person to represent your best interests. So just simply supporting someone based on their race or their gender, but ignoring their politics or ignoring their policies makes no sense to me. And this topic keeps coming up over and over again as if like, hey, nothing matters. Just the identity of the candidate should matter. And the fact that you have 2 people left who are white men should be very sad. Well, yeah, sure, it's sad because I'd like to see more diversity, but what do these 2 individuals represent? And are we actually talking about the substance of these people as opposed to something that they can't control, which is their gender or their race?
Yeah, I understand that. Of course I understand that. At the same time, we're not talking about a Betsy DeVos here, like, oh, just elect her because she's a woman. We're not talking even about an Amy Klobuchar, who we don't agree with. Elizabeth Warren, certainly for 80% of this race, was someone we really, really agreed with. So it would have been wonderful to see that as well. And that's still possible. It's in the realm of possibility. If these are decisions way, way above my pay grade. But if she were to be vice president one day, could she be president one day? Certainly possible. And the pinky promise thing, if you don't know what it is actually, I think it's super touching. She would do it with her youngest female supporters, quote, so that they'll remember that running for president is what girls do. And I love that. And so of course she's disappointed that she couldn't, in a sense, deliver for them. That's the sense I had when in my tiny brief run, and let alone the gigantic run she had and the responsibility she must have felt towards all of them. But I want to end on this. Why do we keep going back to the media? Because they painted it as, for example, in the beginning, that Elizabeth Warren was misrepresenting things by claiming Native American ancestry that her family told her she had her whole life, right? And they're like, can you believe she's doing that, et cetera? And they aided and abetted Donald Trump's smears of her. Then Joe Biden says that he got arrested with Nelson Mandela fighting apartheid. You want to talk about misrepresenting on an issue related to race? That is 1,000 times worse, 10,000 times worse, 1,000,000 times worse than what Elizabeth Warren did. If you think what Elizabeth Warren did was wrong, anyone with any sense, any logic can tell you that. But the media is like, oh yeah, lying about stolen valor with Nelson Mandela in an outrageous, preposterous, absurd, and immoral lie. No big deal. But let's talk 24/7 nonstop about Elizabeth Warren's heritage and related to race. So it is so hard for progressives to overcome this, and the only way to overcome it is to unite. So this is it. We must unite now. If we don't, all might be lost.
We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we have more news for you, including Bernie Sanders and his thoughts on a convention, a contested convention, if Biden has the plurality of delegates. We'll be right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Lots of your comments to go through. There are a lot of good ones here. I started the show by saying welcome back, which I do often, but someone who likes Bernie Sanders wrote in, Uygur is channeling his inner Biden with that intro. Okay, oh boy, I see you, brother. Dropkick Brat writes in, t-shirt and blazer is my favorite look.
Some people are wrong. It's okay.
All right, anyway, it is what it is.
I still like you because you support the show, but you're wrong.
Okay, you're right. Jess said, being a single mother and disabled, I had to stop my membership for 3 months, but the TYT struggle, it broke my heart. I restarted my activist membership last night, so to quote Cenk, I'm back, baby. So Jess, you're the best of the best. I talked to a homeless person during the campaign, and they talked about how we got to get more security in the shelters because they lost their shirt, and he explained that it was more valuable to him than anything that somebody wealthy had because it was his only backup shirt.
Jeez.
So that's exactly right, and just so I appreciate what you're saying, and I feel a deep responsibility about that.
Can I add something to that though? Because oftentimes when you talk to people who are a little more antagonistic toward homeless people, they'll say things like, "Oh well." I've spoken to a few of them and they choose to live outdoors. They choose to be homeless.
Total nonsense.
They don't want to go to the shelters. But like, is there a follow-up question? Have you asked them why they don't want to go to the shelters, right? So people act like the shelters are like the end-all be-all solution for homelessness, but they're not the most welcoming places. And yeah, sometimes they get their stuff stolen and they're fearful. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. So look, I want to do another post game for the members where I talk about my experience with the homeless throughout the campaign. It was eye-opening, it was wonderful, it was amazing. And I want to tell you more about it. TYT.com/join to get all that. Hey, we'll go to the thermometer in a minute to see how TYT.com/go is going because we've got to get to at least 200,000 this month and hopefully every month because we've got to keep this sustainable, especially during this election cycle. But let me go to Effectos. He says, Cenk, the real reason you lost was because the DNC was not ready for your triceps. I think that's fair. We'll talk about it in the post game.
What are you guys doing? Enabling this guy.
Okay, back on the Young Turks, Uygur writes in, the vote in her state was pretty close to even between Biden and Bernie. The Biden voters will forget her in a year. The Bernie supporters will never forget that pivot. A Bernie endorsement is the only way she ensures she has a shot at retaining her seat. Yeah, I don't know about that last part, but I will tell you this. The first part of that is the most true thing. So she, at this point, is critical to the progressive movement and Bernie Sanders. It ain't ever about Bernie Sanders. It's always about the progressive movement, right? And he just happens to be the leader of it right now. But if she backs Biden, for example, again, I just find it unthinkable, unimaginable. But if she did, she'd be at the bottom of their totem pole and they'd throw her overboard the first chance they got. On top of being wrong, immoral, etc., it would be the most foolish political thing you could do if you were interested in having any kind of effect on policy, or even if all you cared about was your own ego. It would be terrible politics.
Quick announcement before we move on to the rest of the news. I wanted to give you guys an update on our affiliate program. So we are up to 779 TYT affiliates. These are people who are supporters of the show. They're looking to help us out and they're helping us sell membership. So if you're interested in doing this, you can go to tyt.com/win-win. For the last couple of months since we launched this program, our affiliates have been adding TYT members. So there's affiliate Estelle from Hell. Get it, girl. She's earned her first commission check, and you could too. Here's how it works. You make a 20% commission on all of the memberships that you bring in, and you keep getting paid each month 20% as long as these individuals are members, right? So it's really exciting. You can sign up today. If you want more information, go to tyt.com/win-win.
You don't have to resell people every month. As long as they stay members, you keep getting commission every single month. All right, let's just check the thermometer before we do anything else. We were trying to get to 100,000 by the end of yesterday's show. Let's see if we got there. Whoa, 109,681. Can I see 200,000 by the end of the show? Yeah, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But let's keep it going, guys. Let's keep it going. 115. Can I see 115?
That's doable. I think
that's doable.
I believe in you guys.
All right, let's see what we got. All right, Anna, go ahead.
All right. The notion of a contested convention at the Democratic National Convention sounds a little less likely. However, Bernie Sanders was asked about what he would do if Joe Biden wins the plurality of pledged delegates, but not the majority necessary to win the nomination. Now, famously, every single candidate, including all those who dropped out, indicated that they would not give the nomination to the individual with the plurality. But what would Bernie Sanders do? Take a look.
It turns out that Vice President Biden is going to have more delegates than you do heading into the convention. Will you drop out?
Of course, I'm going to drop out. He will win. I mean, we'll run through, I suspect we will run through the process. I think people have a right to vote. But if Biden walks into the convention or at the end of the process has more votes than me, he's the winner.
And that's true whether or not he has a majority or just a plurality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice framing there, Rachel. I mean, she started that question out by just assuming that Biden's gonna have more delegates than him going into the convention. I mean, right now, he has more delegates than Bernie Sanders. There's no indication that it's impossible for Bernie to close that gap and to have the lead by the time they get to the convention. But I don't know, am I wrong here?
Yeah, no, you're not at all wrong. And first of all, I want to give credit to Bernie Sanders for being principled on this. He's saying if I come in with the lead, even if it's a plurality, I should get it. But if Biden comes in with the lead, even if it's just a plurality, Biden should get it, not me. Now, has anyone else been consistent like that? No. They all, when Bernie was leading, everybody's like, oh, plurality doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean anything, right? Biden takes the lead, they're like, oh, that's it, plurality. Of course, obviously. Hey, Bernie, why don't you drop out now? You have no chance, why don't you drop out? Wait a minute, what happened to, even if Bernie wins plurality, Biden and everyone else should stay in.
Right.
Right?
I mean, it's a double standard, obviously.
How do you not see that double standard? They said that if Bernie had the plurality, he shouldn't win anyway. That Biden should stay in all the way and then rob him at the convention. Now that Biden has taken a minuscule lead, they're like, Bernie, don't even do any of the rest of the states. Don't go to the convention. Don't ask for delegates, drop out of it. Come on. So look, I think I'm a little at fault here in regards to Rachel Maddow, which is that since I knew her before and we worked together before and she was very good to me when I first went to MSNBC, I've held my fire, and that's not fair to you guys. I listened to a large portion of that interview and it was terrible. Okay, so number one, you're gonna lose. So what are you gonna do when you lose? Okay, you just saw it with your own eyes. Just because you put it in a more sophisticated way doesn't make it any better. That's still your framing. On an Obama gotcha question, which was actually the least offensive of all of them, she framed it with like, oh, I'm such a liberal and I want liberals to win and I'm excited by you. But you had an ad with Obama in it, and Obama, come on, are you saying he's the establishment? Come on, go ahead, criticize Obama. I got it. We all know that gotcha question. Every hack on cable news asked that same question. Oh, I bet if I can go to Bernie into criticizing Obama, that'll make him more likely to lose. Rachel, you don't know that?
Keep going.
You don't know that?
Keep going. This is
but
good.
actually, the worst one was, she asked about, oh, you're not getting enough of the African American votes. Now, wait a minute, Rachel, you could be doing segments about how Joe Biden has lied about his civil rights record over and over and over and over again, pretending that he was at boycotts, sit-ins, churches, protests that he was never at. Have you done your long exposés on Biden on that and saying how unacceptable he is and how those are stolen valor, potentially racist? Yep. Did you talk about how Biden
struggles to get the Latino vote? Right?
Yeah,
who cares about that? Right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to get back to that in a second. And then how Obama picked Biden, not because he was great with African Americans. Obama didn't need help with that. He picked him because he was more likely to get white voters. Why? Because he was against busing. He was for the crime bill that imprisoned millions of African Americans, etc. Instead of doing that, oh, you didn't get enough percentage of the African American vote in South Carolina, etc. So she asked 3 or 4 times about that, framing it like, not only that African Americans don't like you, but there must be a secret reason why they don't like. That's the inference. Rachel, don't pretend that that's not your inference. That's the inference every single mainstream media person has. Why don't African Americans like Bernie Sanders? No, as Bernie explained in his answer, Biden was Obama's vice president. Yes, that's gonna give him some advantage with African Americans. That's the most obvious thing in the world. And Rachel, you don't know that? You don't know that being Obama's vice president might give him an advantage with African American voters? Please tell me you know that. So framing it, insisting and asking over and over and over again makes it seem like Bernie has some sort of racial problem, which he does not have. In fact, there was one person involved in the civil rights movement, and it wasn't Joe Biden, it was Bernie Sanders. But did you insist on that and telling your audience? No, you didn't. And finally, now I didn't see Rachel do this in the interview, but I've seen other outlets say this over and over again. And by omission, she did it, to your point, Anna. Everybody's like, oh, Bernie didn't win enough votes among African Americans in South Carolina. It's over, racial problems, right? Is everybody doing the same thing to Joe Biden? He won almost no votes among Latinos in Nevada. What, Latinos don't count? Did anyone ask Bernie Sanders, how in the world did you get all of those Latinos, such an overwhelming majority of Latinos in Nevada to vote for you? I guess you must be incredibly popular with Latinos and Joe Biden. Why do Latinos hate you? Right. No, never, never, never.
You know, ironically, while trying to imply that Bernie Sanders must be doing something that rubs the African-American community the wrong way, people like Rachel Maddow in the media do something that I would argue is incredibly insensitive and I just think ignorant of certain demographics, right? So the Black community is not a monolith. They're not all the same. And they people in the media keep treating everyone in the African-American community as if they all have the exact same political ideology. There's a pretty significant difference between older Black voters and younger Black voters. Older Black voters who definitely turned out for Joe Biden tend to be a little more conservative. So they prefer a more moderate candidate, okay? And by the way, anyone who goes after those voters and says, oh, they're voting for Biden because they're ignorant, this and that, you're not helping either, okay? This is the candidate that they feel is gonna best represent them. I don't think that it helps anyone's case by calling anyone ignorant, but I do think it is ignorant to assume that everyone who's Black or everyone who's Latino is gonna vote a certain way. No, there are differences even among that demographic, and age has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, you could ask Joe Biden, how come you do terribly among young African Americans? So, but one last thing on the hypocrisy. They always ask Bernie Sanders, well, are you saying that African American voters, that this is a particularly odious trick, are part of the establishment? Because you criticize the establishment, but African American voters largely voted for Joe Biden in South Carolina. So are you insulting African Americans by calling them part of that establishment? It's a nice little rhetorical trick, but let's flip it on its head. So Biden constantly criticizes Sanders as an unrealistic progressive who can't get anything done. But Latinos vote overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden, are you calling Latinos unrealistic radicals? Is that what you're doing? That seems incredibly offensive to Latinos. Isn't it funny that they do one, but never, ever the other?
I definitely don't find it funny, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's frustrating because people keep treating this election, this primary race, as if all of these candidates have been treated the same. They've been given similar opportunities. They've been handled the same way in these interviews. But I think that it's pretty clear that throughout this entire primary, there have been moderate candidates, and it's switched from one to the next, right? That have been propped up by the mainstream press. And you're seeing it right now with Biden. And the thing that makes it even more infuriating with Biden is he is the most vulnerable candidate up against Donald Trump, right? With the Ukraine accusations. I get it. People think that that's unfair to bring up because of course the right wing is gonna use conspiracy theories against Biden. But his son did work on that gas board, right? And so that's gas company board, I should say. And it's an issue, it's a vulnerability. There's that. There's the fact that he keeps making these giant mistakes on the debate stage and the campaign trail, which allows for the Trump campaign to put together these lengthy compilation videos of Joe Biden saying things that make you question his mental capacity to be president. It's what are you guys doing? Do you want to beat Trump or not? If so, why would you prop up the most vulnerable candidate? I don't get it.
And lastly on this, we're walking right into a disaster. Biden is gonna get pummeled by the Republicans, just absolutely pulverized. They're gonna take every clip of him not knowing which state he's in, not knowing what he's saying.
Not knowing the Declaration of Independence.
They're gonna say, you show it 1 billion times, maybe literally 1 billion times on social media, mainstream media. The mainstream media will also flip on Biden after, oh, we have to be fair, and they'll play those over and over again. They will not, under penalty of law, talk about his potential senility during the primary election, but the minute it becomes a general election, they're gonna say there's something wrong with Joe Biden. Everybody agrees there's something wrong with Joe Biden. We're walking right off that cliff. Then Trump will win. What on God's green earth are you guys doing? So the guys who said they want to beat Trump so bad, turns out, as we always suspected, no, they'd rather beat Bernie Sanders than Donald Trump.
Well, let's take a break. When we come back, we will get through some of these stories a little more quickly. There's a lot more to get to, including a new ad that the Bernie campaign put out featuring Barack Obama. We'll show you that and more when we return.